If you've only one place to visit in Yorkshire, perhaps Ilkley it is, because it has a continuous history going back over 5,000 years. In this film, we'll be visiting both Ilkley and its moor. The town was founded in Roman times and was popularised in the 19th century as a spa resort. By contrast, the moor has rock formations as well as rock art and vast panoramas, making it ideal for walking. So, let's visit Ilkley and its moor. Ilkley lies on the Wharfe Valley and is 17 miles, 27 kilometres from Leeds, 10 miles or 16 kilometres from Skipton, but surprisingly lies in the Bradford district. We're setting off at the town hall by the railway station and going to follow a circular route. From the town hall, we're heading towards the principal shopping street of Ilkley, the Grove, and following that to the War Memorial Gardens at the end. This is Station Road and lies at the foot of the road to the moor. On the left is a complex of public buildings, including the library, the town hall, the King's Hall and the Winter Garden. Originally, the town hall was at the other end of the road, which we'll see later, but the council wanted something grander that would reflect its position. Keighley already had its first free public library. It was funded by Glasgow-born industrialist Andrew Carnegie in 1902. Carnegie made his money from steel in America. Carnegie agreed to fund Ilkley's and the council built the adjoining town hall. In 1908, the King's Hall was built for concerts, and 4 years later, when it was found visitors had few choices where to go when it was raining, built the interconnecting Winter Garden. Behind this complex on Whittencroft Road is the Toy Museum, a private collection of anything from dolls to games. Although it reminds children, parents and grandparents of toys of yesteryear, they might not recognise the oldest toy. It dates to 350 BC. It's only open at weekends from 12 noon. Almost opposite the Winter Garden is the main entrance to the railway station. This brought flocks of visitors to the town when it opened on the 1st of August 1865. Trains from Leeds and Bradford could now come here to its terminus. However, in 1887, the line was extended to Skipton via Bolton Abbey, and it meant building a box-girder bridge and an embankment across the centre of the town. This extension closed in 1965, and the station reverted back to being a terminus. Wells Road to the left leads up to the moor and to White Wells and its plunge pool. We'll see it when we visit the moor. At left is Wells Walk. This is where Ilkley Brook flows down from the moor and is then culverted under Brook Street all the way down to the river. It was laid out as gardens, as a place to promenade up to the moor. Bridges criss-cross the beck to make it far easier to get steeper and steeper on the way up. Coming up from the right is Brook Street and the end of our journey around Ilkley. Now we're at the start of a grove. This street was developed in 1855 and the buildings on the right were built in 1899 as a lavish shopping parade, which it still remains today, with its ornate canopies and wide boulevard-style footpath. The Grove Bookshop Friars, as Ilkley has an annual literature festival that began in 1973 and attracts acclaimed authors from all over the world to give talks at various venues around the town. Across the road is the Congregational Church of 1868 that now has a mezzanine floor put in so that the ground floor can be used for community organisations. Just beyond is a seating area with a bandstand. Behind, where the long grass lawn rises up, is Grove House, Yorkshire's first convalescent hospital when it opened in 1862 and then called the Ilkley Bath Charity. It has now been developed into a care home. Straight across the road is Betty's. It was founded in Harrogate in 1919 and opened here in Ilkley in 1964. Traditional teas are served here by staff in formal uniform. We're going to walk to the end of the road and then turn around to go back to the road at the right, Cunliffe Road. The little garden on the right just beyond is called Chalybeate Gardens. Chalybeate is a natural iron-rich mineral water that flows in the streams from the moor. That's why people came Ilkley to drink the water, although you'd be lucky to get even a drop today. Just behind is a stone bath. The inscription on the side says that it was given by Hamer Stansfield in memory of Vincent Prieschnitz. Hamer was a former Lord Mayor of Leeds who had travelled to what is today the Czech Republic to meet Vincent Prieschnitz, who used water treatments to cure his father. Hamer then returned and built the first hydro in Ilkley at Wheatley, later renamed Ben Ridding in 1846. Its success eclipsed the other spa towns of Yorkshire like Harrogate and Scarborough, although some of the treatments were more like torture. The ornate doorway between two shops was the entrance to the Old Town Hall and built in 1894. The Grove really ends here, bends right to join the A65 to Skipton, and the road veering left leads about a mile away to Heaver's Gill, another path up a ravine that crosses bridges to reach the moor. In World War I, Ilkley became a bit of a garrison town because soldiers could be billeted in the hotels, including the Duke of Wellington's and the Leeds Bantams, those under 5 foot 2 inches tall or 1.57 metres, who came to train here. The cenotaph records 183 deaths in World War I. The stone in the path behind recognises those from Ilkley who served during World War I. And behind that, the World War II memorial to the 69 men who died from the town. Now, let's turn around and backtrack to Cunliffe Road. We're going to walk across the centre of the town to the parish church on the main road. Morton's is a traditional ironmonger's that seems to sell everything and has been here since 1937. At right, this lane, Back Grove Road, built of stone sets, used to run alongside the railway embankment that ran across here. The line went to Addingham and then Bolton Abbey and to Skipton, where it joined the Aire Valley line. To the left is the Clark Foley Community Centre that was built in 1981, and it was funded by a bequest from the family of that name, who emigrated to America. From here we pass around the Moor Shopping Centre that was developed in the 1980s. Head around here and to the rear we find the Arcade, an indoor shopping centre that was built in 1895. Every town at that time had to have one. It's rather unusual with its stairs up to the shops. Head forwards. But you have to pull back a heavy sliding door. It brings you out onto the main road through the town, the A65, that runs from Leeds to Kendal in the Lake District. At left, at the bottom of Cunliffe Road, is this quaint cottage that was built in 1720 as a farmhouse, but is better known today as the Box Tree, a Michelin-starred restaurant that was established in 1962. A little further on the road out of town is the old grammar school that was built in 1637 and served the town until 1872, when a new, much larger grammar school opened up on the road to the moor, which we'll pass later on. Now, back to where we were. Straight opposite the exit of the arcade is the Flying Duck pub. The road used to pass in front of the 18th century building, but look how much the road has been raised over the years. Pass in front of the arch that leads to the Manor House. We'll see that after visiting the church. The church seen today mostly dates from the 15th century and stands on what was the Roman fort. The first church was probably established in the 8th century. Christianity was spread at the Wharfe Valley from the Archbishop of York's palace at Ilkley, about 5 miles away. It's open most days. The pews in the nave were all removed from the church in 2019. But first look in the tower base. Here are 3 crosses. We'll look at them in a minute, but on the tower's back wall, the west wall, you can find 2 Roman altars. In 306 AD, Constantine the Great was proclaimed emperor in York. He allowed Christianity to be tolerated from 312. This altar shows Verbia, the goddess of a river wharf. In her hand she holds 2 snakes, the Roman emblem for water, one representing the wharf and the other Ilkley Brook. The 3 crosses date between the 8th and 10th centuries. Originally they would have been brightly coloured. The tallest has 4 panels. At the top is Jesus, whilst the others depict beasts. On the reverse are depictions of the evangelists. They have heads of beasts but human bodies. The crosspiece has been reassembled from 2 fragments. The upper piece was found in the wharf in 1884 and probably doesn't belong to this cross. The second tallest has the finest carving, but is much eroded, for at one time it was used as a gatepost. The third, the shortest, is just the top of the shaft. This is probably the oldest one, and again is well worn. The panel depicts beasts on all sides, apart from one that shows a man holding a book, most likely the Bible. From here, let's move around to the north side of the church. Here is the private pew of the Watkinson family that dates from 1633. The font next to it is medieval, although the unusual font cover, that is raised and lowered on a pulley mechanism, was made in 1634. Follow the north wall to the side chapel and look immediately right. This is the effigy of Adam Middleton, who died around 1320. The Middletons were the landowners of Ilkley right up to 1893. When leaving the church, turn left and follow the path around to the rear. This flat area is the northern part of the Roman fort. This was built around AD 80 to protect the river crossing. The road northwards, at the bottom of the picture, goes to Aldborough near Brook Bridge. Southwards it climbs Ilkla Moor to Manchester. Eastwards, at the left of the picture, to Tadcaster in York, and westwards via Skipton to Ingleton. It originally was a wooden fort and was rebuilt in stone in 196 AD. The Romans left Britain around 410 AD and the fort would have been plundered for its stone. Following the grass area round, we come to the Manor House. Wasn't where the Lord of the Manor lived, as they lived at Middleton Lodge, that stands high on the opposite side of the valley overlooking the town. The site has been in use since the 14th century, probably as a local court for the family. But what we're looking at, it was mostly a rebuild of the 17th century. It was saved from demolition in 1955 and from 1961 until 2015 was a museum. In 2017 it was taken over by Friends of Ilkley Manor House for use as an art space and still includes a small museum. It's open weekends only. The lower rooms would be as it probably looked in the 17th and 18th centuries when it was subdivided into 3 cottages. On display are some Roman graves. This one shows an unnamed family and dates from around the year 100. and is for the 30-year-old wife of a Roman soldier. She has long plaited hair and sits on a high-backed chair. She is called the Cornovian lady, as she was born in the Cheshire, Shropshire area. If you turn right on leaving and follow the Manor House around to the rear, the path takes you past a piece of Roman wall that was found in excavations in 1927. We're now looking across Riverside Gardens, a vast expanse that runs down to the River Wharf. Head across it, past a fantastic children's playground, and just beyond is a cafe and pub. Here, follow the river path to the old Packhorse Bridge. On the parapet to this side, you can see flood markers. But before crossing the bridge, there's a small plant nursery at the end. Look at this sign. This is the start of the Dales Way long-distance footpath that runs 80 miles or 129 kilometres from Ilkley to Lake Windermere in the Lake District. The Packhorse Bridge dates from 1673 and leads to Middleton on the other bank. The bridge crosses the River Wharf. The river starts at Beckerman's in the Yorkshire Dales, 32 miles or 51 kilometres away upstream. Downstream it flows a further 40 miles or 64 kilometres to join the River Ouse at Cawood, just south of York. You can either cross the bridge and turn right at the end, or retrace your steps along the riverside path through the park to the bridge further downstream. This is called the New Bridge and was built in 1904. The Middleton family sold the last of their Ilkley lands in 1893, and developers were keen to build houses on the Middleton side of the river, but it was inaccessible to motor vehicles. At right, at the end of the bridge, are steps down to Riverside Gardens, where there's a flagpole and plaque. It says that the park was given by the people of Ilkley at the end of World War II. The road up here is New Brook Street and follows the embankment of the Roman fort until we reach the traffic lights at the A65. Across the road is the Crescent Hotel that was built in 1860. It was a hotel and much cheaper to stay at than the Hydros, which were built at the edge of the moor. Like the Grove, Brook Street was developed in 1855. And now we're back at the top where it joins the Grove. Turning left takes us back onto Station Road again. It's 1.5 miles or 2.5 kilometres from the town centre up to the Cowper Rocks at the edge of Ilkla Moor. From the Cowper car park, we're going to take a 5-mile circular walk around the moor that will take between 3 to 4 hours. Maps and guides are available at the Visitor Information Centre in the Town Hall or at the Grove Bookshop. On the left we pass Ilkley Grammar School. On the right is Craiglands Hotel, built as a hydro in 1859, and it's still open. Many were demolished or they've been turned into retirement homes. The building ahead on the horizon is the Cow and Calf Hotel. This was built in 1873 as a house and in 1949 became a pub and hotel. But turn right here into the free car park, where there's also a cafe that's open most days, and there are toilets here too. We're just a few steps away from the car park here and to see the easiest geological feature to find on Ilkla Moor. It's the Cow and Calf. What we have behind me was one huge block of stone. Over the millennia, a crack appeared in the stone and part of it sheared off. That's called the Calf. It rolled part of the way down the hillside and remains there ever since. Legend has it that a giant called Rombold had an argument with his wife, and as he strode away towards Armscliff Crag 7 miles away, he slipped and broke the calf from the cow. His wife, chasing him, gathered stones in her apron to throw at him, but the apron strings broke and scattered rocks right across the moor. Ooh, that was quite a climb up that hill from the Cow and Calf rocks. And what I'm on now is the first terrace of the moor, but I'm heading over in this direction, right up onto the skyline where there's another terrace, and I'm going to meet somebody who's going to tell us about the Haystacks Rock.
Welcome to Green Crag Slack. This is a small part of Ilkla Moor, which in turn is part of Rombold Moor, a large block of upland sandwiched between the two valleys of the Wharfe and the River Aire. Today people look out across Green Crag Slack and look at this landscape almost as if it's a natural landscape, that this is how it has always been. But in fact it is a very heavily modified landscape. It's the product of countless generations of people working the landscape in different ways, changing its character to what we see today. Right, so here we are at one of the famous carved rocks of Rombold Moor. This particular rock is known as the haystack, which takes its name from the sort of early traditional way of building up a haystack. It's covered with what we call cup and rings, an indentation in the surface with a ring around it. This cup and ring also has an additional piece which is called a tail running out of it, and people have suggested that this is actually representing a comet. So you have the comet with its halo around it and the long tail streaming out behind. And it is frequently suggested that in fact the cup and ring marks and all the grooves are astrological observations, but that is only one of many ideas, and as yet nobody can prove either way which is the right one. So we know that people are here, we know that they've been changed in the landscape by cutting down the trees. So where were they living? In this area we have a circular feature which may have in fact been one of the hut circles in which they were living.
Well, I've taken the path behind me down from Green Crag Slack, and now I've come to Backstone Beck, which I've got to cross to get to the path to the other side that takes us up to the 12 Apostles. We've got to cross here, but there is a bridge a lot further down. So, up we go. There are a large number of well-defined tracks across the moor, but perhaps this is the most famous. It crosses across to Bingley, and it was on this path that the dialect song on Ilkley Moor baht'at was written. Let historian Arnold Kellett take up the story.
That its origin is not in Yorkshire but in Kent, because the tune at least was written by a Canterbury boot and shoemaker, a man called Thomas Clark, and he was a conductor of Methodist choirs. Now, although Thomas Clark was an experienced musician, he was illiterate until the age of 28. And the man who taught him to read and write was a schoolmaster in the village of Cranbrook in Kent. And in 1805, one of the tunes that Clark composed, he named in honour of this schoolmaster, and he called it Cranbrook, and that's the tune that we sing. It originally was, of course, used as a hymn tune, and the first words sung to it were written by Dr. Doddridge, who'd been a friend of John Wesley's. And the previous century, John Wesley had encouraged his people to, as he put it, sing lustily, sing with dignity, but sing with all their heart and soul, especially when they sang in the open air. And this is the kind of thing you would have heard when the tune was first published. Something like this. Grace, 'tis a charming sound, 'tis music to mine ear. Heaven with the echo shall resound, heaven with the echo shall resound, and all the earth shall hear, and all the earth shall hear, and all the earth shall hear. So there it was, a hymn tune, and it became very popular, and other words were sung to it, for example, "Oh, for a Thousand Tongues" by Charles Wesley, and especially "While Shepherds Watched Their Flocks by Night," which is a great favourite in Yorkshire. And then we think from about 1850 we can place it. It couldn't have been much before then, but in the late Victorian period there was a choir outing. And for linguistic and topographical reasons I've gone into in this book, we think these choir singers came from the Halifax area, and they would follow the traditional routes, starting at Dick Hudson's, and they would walk over the moor, and as they walked they sang. We've got to remember, especially in those days, choir outings meant singing without hymn books, without hymn sheets. They just sung for the pleasure of it. Another thing that was very common on choir outings, people did a bit of courting. In fact, I did some of my own courting more than 50 years ago now it would be, as I look back, on a choir outing. And it was very common for people to wander off and do a little bit of canoodling. And one couple, when they returned from courting, had their legs pulled by their fellows in the choir, and they said something to them like this: "Hey, we were to barn when I saw thee. Where were you going when I saw you wandering off to do your courting?" A later version was, "Where est to been? Where have you been since I saw you?" Which isn't quite as logical. It would be originally, the oldest version, "We were to barn." It's an old Viking word actually in dialect. "We were to barn when I saw thee on Ilkla Moor, baht'at." That means without hat. In those days everybody wore a hat. But this lad, because he knew he was going off to do a bit of courting, or perhaps because he lost it during a romp in the heather, I don't know, but he was without a hat, and in those days if you went without a hat you might catch cold. That's bound to catch the dear the cold. And then of course he would die. Then we'll let her bury thee, bury him on the moor, and then worms will come and eat thee up. People were more familiar then with the idea of worms eating corpses, because there was no cremation. You see the term used in hymns sometimes, the worms destroying the body. And then of course the ducks. Then ducks will come and eat up worms. Why did they think of ducks? Perhaps it's seen some on Ilkley Tarn, as I've seen ducks on Ilkley Tarn. Then we shall come and eat up ducks. Then we shall all have eaten thee. That's where we get his own back. This fascinating cycle, even Shakespeare used this actually in Hamlet, the idea of, the life cycle. But it was just a Victorian leg pull. They were just having a bit of fun, and I think it would have just disappeared from history if they'd put these words to any other tune, but they chose this. "We're what a barn when I saw thee, on Ilkla Moor, baht'at."
A well-known song. And also on this trail we come across a shooting lodge here, but there's something rather unusual about it. Let's have a look. Well, what do we have here? We've got an actual post box. Top flat says poems in and the bottom one poems out. I'm prepared. I've done my poem already. So all I need to do is put it in the top flap, wind the handle around, and the poem should come out the bottom. Yes, it has. Here it is. This is to our Poet Laureate himself, Simon Armitage, made Poet Laureate in 2019. Amelia's written a poem here, a very brightly coloured one, so we'll put that back in for someone else to wind out. So Simon Armitage is actually one of the co-founders of this route. He lives in Marsden, 45¼ miles away from here. We're not going that far today, we're heading upwards to the 12 Apostles Stone Circle. Well, we're almost at the top of the moor now. That stone post over there, that shows the extent of the lands of William Middleton. Up here, we're going to see the 12 Apostles Stone Circle.
The 12 Apostles is 58 foot or 18 metres in diameter, and not surprisingly has 12 stones around it. Was this a site for pagan rituals, as it's aligned with both the summer and winter solstices, or a neutral meeting point for tribes? The last Middleton land sale took place in 1893, when Ilkley Moor was sold for £17,000 to Bradford Urban District Council. 1,700 acres or 699 hectares of Ilkley Moor continues to be looked after by the council's countryside service today. A glacier pushed down the valley 20,000 years ago, and when the ice melted it left behind these escarpments. It had also pushed rocks right up to the moor top. It's hard millstone grit up here and covered in peat that takes around 100 years of decaying vegetation to create a centimetre. You can tell if you come in August, it'll be a blaze of purple heather, as heather loves peaty conditions, as do ground nesting birds like grouse and curlews.
I've come about half a mile westwards of the stone circle up here, and we come across a very obvious feature. This is the Roman road that comes up from the fort at Ilkley, crosses over the top of the moor, drops down to Bingley and then on towards Manchester. But I'm heading over here because although this road is an obvious feature, it wasn't always so. Although the Roman road is fairly obvious for us today, perhaps it wasn't so hundreds of years ago, when it might have been just a muddy track. And that's probably why they built this, Cowper's Cross, as a waymark across the moor. Behind me, it leads across to Silsden, down into the Aire Valley and to Skipton.
You might see, looking down from Cowper's Cross, what looks like crop circles, but they're not. The moor was deliberately set on fire in 2006, and 500 acres or 202 hectares were destroyed. The flames, fanned by the constant windy conditions, it took 8 days to extinguish the fire. However, peat continued to burn for months and exposed the rock underneath, so a trial was made to see which was the best way to reintroduce heather: by plug plants, a very expensive process, reseeding, or by putting cut heather, called brash, onto the surface. Go down the Roman road towards Ilkley, and when it starts to drop quickly on a bend with a bench, there's a well-defined track to the right, from which you can see a huge rock on the moor, about a 10-minute walk away.
At around 1,000 foot, this is the highest of the stones with rock carvings on it. This one's called the Badger Stone because of its distinctive shape on the rock of looking like a badger's back. It's got the most cup and ring markings on it as well. There's 95. Probably not best seen today when the light's fairly bright. Come in an early evening when the low light's slanting on it and it will pick up all these distinctive features. From here, I'm going around the side of it and we're dropping down to White Wells.
Below, you'll meet the path to White Wells, clearly visible to the right. The large square building below is Wells House. It was built in 1856 as a hydro at a phenomenal cost of £30,000. It had 87 bedrooms. This imposing building was designed by Cuthbert Broderick, the architect who designed Leeds Town Hall and many other buildings in the city. It's now apartments. This is a popular easy path to the moor, although most people only get as far as White Wells, the building in the trees. If the flag is flying, it means the cafe is open. Although I'm walking up, visitors coming up for the invigorating dip in the plunge pool would have come by donkey. So this is White Wells, the reason for Ilkley's second golden age. The spring up here was discovered in the 1690s, but there wasn't anything up here until 1791, when 2 rock pools were built for plunge baths, and they were open to the air until the building was built in the 1820s. That's the bathhouse today, but if you just go round the corner, we can see the original spring behind. Looks like a bath is out of luck. The first building on the right, which is now a toilet, was the poor bath. You weren't charged to go in here. Today there's only one plunge pool accessible and you can have a dip in it when the cafe is open. But be sure to bring up your trunks and towel, and the changing facilities are a bit basic. It's now become an annual ritual to jump in the pool on New Year's Day when the water is around 6 degrees, too cold for some to last more than a few seconds. However, you do have to be careful. 9-year-old Anne Harper drowned in here on the 15th of August 1793. The path down from here goes to the top of Wells Road and Wells Promenade seen earlier, passes by an outdoor paddling pool, and to the right of that Ilkley Tarn, where visitors used to stroll around. On the opposite side of the road are Darwin Gardens. Charles Darwin stayed up here when his controversial book On the Origin of Species was first published in November 1859. He was staying at Hillside, the farmhouse near the paddling pool. But we're climbing back up again from the path by the far side of White Wells. Walk up here until you almost reach the steps and then turn left and follow the path. And yet another unique feature on the moor. This is called the Rocky Valley. It's different from the Wharf Valley just below me here because this wasn't created by glaciation, but this is a result of a landslide coming down here, exposing the hard rock at the top there, making it ideal for rock climbers. Follow the path to the end of the Rocky Valley, where you have fine views across to the top of the Cow and Calf Rocks. You have to cross Backstone Beck again and take the footpath straight ahead. This is Hanging Stone Quarry. It was created to quarry stone for the houses being erected in Ilkley in the 1850s. Quarrying eventually ceased in 1894. But a visitor to the town in 1865, a Mr. Terry, saw the rock art up here and bought the panorama stones, but unfortunately the rock cracked in two whilst being transported. If you have a head for heights, you can scramble up to the top of a cow rock and marvel how rock art, or graffiti, has continued ever since. Some of these inscriptions date back to the 1860s. From here, you can see the car park and return down for a well-earned cup of tea, or cake, or even an ice cream. 5,000 years or more of history. Ilkley is just one of the towns that we cover on our channel. We're always adding new content all the time, so be sure to subscribe to keep up to date with what we're posting. So, until next time, thanks for watching and hope to see you again soon.